This video is presented by the Heartland Audio Library. Micawber by John Lithgow. Hi everyone, my name is Julie, and I'm going to read you one of my favorite books today called Micawber by John Lithgow, and it's about a squirrel who lives in New York City and is an artist. I love this book because my husband is also an artist, and he's actually friends with the artist who drew the pictures in the book. So he inscribed this to us. His name is C.F. Payne. He's an award-winning illustrator. And on our title page here, we've got a squirrel in the image of a famous painting that you might want to look up after this book that looks kind of like this, but was painted of a person instead of a squirrel. And on our second page here, we've got an image of Central Park in New York City, where Micawber lives. One Sunday in springtime, Micawber arose from his Central Park carousel nest. He straightened his whiskers and polished his nose and set off for the place he loved best. Can you find Micawber? He scampered past pigeons and poodles and geese, past boathouse and Bandshallon Zoo, past joggers and skaters and mounted police, to a palace on Fifth Avenue. Fifth Avenue is a famous street in New York City. He's heading to somewhere he thinks is a palace. Can you find him again on this picture? For inside was a splendid collection of art, a sight for a squirrel to treasure, a feast every week for his eyes and his heart, which Micawber could savor at leisure. So it's not technically a palace, even though Micawber feels like it is. This is a very famous art museum called the Metropolitan Museum of Art, a huge art museum in New York City. So you can see here, there's some people looking at art, and I'm wondering if you can find Micawber. He's up high if you haven't found him yet. Through the windows he'd gaze at Van Dyck and Van Gogh, appraise every Rembrandt and Titian. He would scrutinize Rubens, peruse each Rousseau, inspect each Lautrec and Cassatt and Moreau. He would find a new favorite each time he would go, and nobody charged him admission. Now we're getting a view of Micawber from that ceiling looking down. And it says, but a stranger appeared this particular day as Micawber peered down through a skylight. She stood at an easel beneath a Monet that depicted a haystack at twilight. So here's another artist painting in the museum using a famous Monet painting. Monet is a famous painter. She's painting it, and Micawber's watching her. All right, can you find him again? He's way up high again. Micawber observed her for hours on end as she copied each texture and shade. He noted the stroke of each brush she'd extend, the rare concentration and care she'd expend. She'd become his unwitting and unknowing friend by the time the day started to fade. I'm wondering if you can find Micawber in this picture. Only his tail is showing, and he did something kind of sneaky. I hope you can find it. If you haven't found him yet, I'll give you a hint. He's trying to go home with the artist. So he hid in the box where her paints were all stowed while she bicycled home unawares. Then he sneaked himself into her modest abode as she hauled her equipment upstairs. Can you see him now, right here in the foreground? Looks like she's asleep and he's getting up. From the box after midnight, the stowaway crept, stretched his limbs and adjusted his eyes. And while his beguiler contentedly slept, he rifled through all her supplies. Micawber's dull life, with its tedious toils, all at once seemed 100 times duller. As he straddled a pallet and squeezed out some oils, he discovered the wonders of color. Look at his paintbrush. He has a built-in paintbrush right on the end of his tail. He daubed at a canvas with cadmium green, employing his tail as a brush. Then magenta, vermilion, ultramarine, alizarin, crimson, and bright tangerine. Such a radiant rainbow he never had seen, so splashy and lavish and lush. By morning, Micawber was finally done, and so proud that he practically fainted. He'd been looking at paintings from day number 1, but never a painting he'd painted. She's looking kind of confused. As the sunlight poured in, he was ready to go, leaving everything just as he'd found it. Through the transom he scrambled, his canvas in tow, rolled up with a shoelace tied round it. She's like, where'd my shoelace go? A truck trundled by as Micawber alit. On the side, it said Park Sanitation. He bounded aboard it, ignoring the grit, and completed his peregrination. Getting a ride from the trash truck. He returned 30 times by the following fall, and the paintings poured forth like a geyser. He fastened them all to his living room wall, and the woman was never the wiser. So if some July you should chance to pass by a Viridian Central Park dale, look around for a squirrel with a gleam in his eye and some paint on the tip of his tail. There's Micawber back in Central Park. Can you find which one is him? There's a few squirrels here. One of them has some paint on his tail. I wonder if you can find it. And if you should visit the old carousel, look up at its uppermost part. Inside, although nobody ever could tell, a talented squirrel continues to dwell. If you try, you can picture it, clear as a bell. And so this last page is my favorite because here's Micawber's house, the top of the carousel. And this is a really big page. I'm hoping we can all see it. And he's having an art show in his house. So I'm going to start over here. You can see he's got friends coming to see other animals, coming to see his art. All of Micawber's art that he did all that fall. There's another one. Oh, here he is welcoming people or animals into his house. And then there's all his art. And then the carousel closes back up. And on the last page is Micawber doing a drawing based on his picture. And this is based on a famous painting by an artist named Norman Rockwell. So I hope you enjoyed Micawber. And now for a couple of questions. Question number 1. Micawber liked to visit the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. Have you ever been to an art museum? If so, do you remember what it's called? Question 2. What kind of art do you most enjoy viewing? And question 3. What is your favorite kind of art to create? Do you like to draw, paint, sculpt, or create in some other way? I hope you can take a few minutes to talk about these questions with somebody in your home. And I hope that you enjoyed our story about Micawber today. And if you have time today, maybe you can go create some art.